Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack 4 Business Podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
So, question to the audience, is your business actually worth what you think it is? Or is it too dependent on you to sell it at all? That's exactly what Caroline will help us unpack in this episode. She'll walk us through why being the face of your business might be lowering its value, what red flags buyers look for, and how to build real, transferable value, whether you're planning to sell or just want more freedom. If you ever wondered what your business is really worth, or you've accidentally built yourself a job instead of a company, this particular podcast is more about numbers. It's about your future. And our guest today is Caroline Troy from Troy Valuations. Caroline is the founder of Troy Valuations and a returning guest from the Knack for Business podcast. Actually, this is her third time back here, which is awesome. She's got over 20 years of Canadian capital markets under her belt, and with a designation of Chartered Business Valuator, she helps businesses grow and answer the critical question, what's my business really worth? Caroline offers plain-spoken, practical advice across high-stakes moments like shareholder disputes, divorce settlements, and she's recognized as an expert witness in the Alberta courts. She also serves on the board of a blockchain trust company that is recently named one of the top 10 business valuation providers for 2024 by Financial Services Review. When she's not crunching numbers, she's wrangling horses, hatching chicken puns in the foothills outside Calgary. Hey, Carol, it is good to have you back. It's great to see the smiling face. And for those of you who can't see her, trust me, she's a wonderful lady. Caroline, what is your favorite quote or saying, ma'am?
Well, funny. I think my favorite one this time is the most important single central fact about a free market is that no exchange can take place unless both parties benefits. And that is from Milton Friedman. And it really comes down to that invisible hand theory of Adam Smith. The baker does not bake bread because he likes to bake bread. He bakes bread because somebody will pay him for the bread. He doesn't do it just out of the goodness of his heart. And that's what's captured in that quote by Milton Friedman.
I thought for a second you were going to go for a tongue twister there. No bread. Bountiful baked bread. Anyhow, I'm being silly. Let's get on to the task at hand. So, why is it being the face of your business a risky factor? Like if you look at an influencer, it's their face, it's their sound. What's the difference between someone on stage and someone running a business?
It's a key man problem. I don't know if you've heard that expression, key man. Businesses will buy insurance for their key man. What that is if that person is valuable to that company, then they will protect the company by having insurance on that person's life and or disability. So let's say you've got an absolute stellar salesperson, and that salesperson is driving the sales. They may be the head of the sales team, who knows? But if that person should have a terrible accident, what's going to happen to the business? The worst thing, sales will stop. They'll fall in the toilet, and what are you going to do about it? The insurance is there to bridge that gap between when the thing happens and how to recover. And that means maybe waiting for that person to get better, or maybe putting them in the ground and finding someone. I don't know. So that key man problem is addressed through insurance. But if you're the business owner, what's going to happen to your business if you're the person that's hurt? What happens to your employees? What happens to your lease? What happens to your customers? What happens to your suppliers? All of those can be affected, and they can be affected negatively. So that is probably the biggest risk when the face of the business is you. Now, we can also talk about personal goodwill, and you talked about influencers, and that's another problem. Can I tell a story? I like these.
Yes. Oh, Carolyn, I don't know. We don't like stories here. We like it just cold facts, just cold, dry facts. Go for it.
Okay, so tell the story. My story is I had a hairdresser. He was a great stylist. He was really, really good. I liked him a lot. I followed Ghazi. His name is Ghazi. I followed him to seven different studios. Every time he picked up and moved, I moved with him. I was probably his client for 10 years. And then Ghazi decided to move back to Lebanon where his family lived. And I just decided that was too far for me to go. Ghazi was really great. I really liked him and I liked what I outsourced my appearance to my stylist. My relationship was with Ghazi. It was not with any of the salons that he was in. That customer relationship was between me and him. So that's personal goodwill. So if you're a salon owner or you want to buy a salon, you can buy the salon itself. You can buy the leasehold improvements. You can buy the product. You can buy, good-looking signage. You can get the great location with the people, the walk-through location. You can buy everything. But you can't buy the customer relationship. So that's non-transferable value. And that's a real problem when you are the business, like the influencer, like Ghazi. No salon could capture that relationship between us. So that's why being the face of your business is actually risky for the value. It's two things. Like one is the key man problem. And then secondly, you can't transfer that goodwill.
Or you have to travel to Lebanon to get your hair styled.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
It's just too far. Yeah, he was a nice man. I really liked working with him and being his customer. Yeah, it was nice.
I'm really enjoying taking at things with a fresh view. And one thing that I had never occurred to me to talk to you about is actually in my notes, which I'm kind of excited about, owner dependence. It's one thing to take a snapshot evaluating a business and its value, but explaining to a client what owner dependence is, tell us more.
Owner dependence is a problem when you have a customer, when they're very proud of what they built. So don't get me wrong here. I got a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. They put themselves out there and they try really hard and generally successful. When I hear about owner dependency, because I have a lot of respect for business owners and I look at a lot of businesses, I got to tell you, I look at tons of businesses. And sometimes the business owner gets in and they turn that business into something that's wildly successful. And it's rare. I have to tell you that. Most businesses are just solid businesses, but they're not spectacular. More often than not, businesses are dependent upon their owner. And that's because they are proud of doing it and they don't let go.
They bought a job.
Sometimes it's worked out that way. Sometimes it's not. It's outside of their control.
So if on the flip side, you're looking to buy a business, what are the key elements you're going to look for? Obviously, the person coming in, you're going to have your emotion, you have your I like this, I like the flavor, how this is running, whether it's actually food or otherwise. And maybe there's, a hairdresser involved and going, I really like the way the flow is happening. But what are the things that they start looking at when they step back and the emotions now have parted the waves and now you're starting to do cold calculations? Not in a heartless way, but like, can I make this work? Right? It's like if I buy a car, can I drive it all the full distance of travel? Can I go 800 kilometers in a day as opposed to 200 and I have to plug back in?
So the first thing is How much cash does it make? Don't be confused. Cash. Cash is king. Look for the cash. Cash is revenue minus operating expenses. Does it make cash? That's the very first thing to look for. And then from that, is the revenue stable? And is it increasing, or is it stable and decreasing? And that's a problem. Is there technological change coming? So I'm thinking about Kodak film, Kodachrome, right? These things killed Kodachrome because you now no longer needed the film to keep the picture. Now it's in your phone, right? There was technological change. Videos. You used to rent videos back in the 90s. No more. Well, nobody watches a video on a cassette. Doesn't happen anymore. Technological change. So when you're looking to buy that business, you're looking for stable revenue in an industry that's not expected to have a negative effect or negative change. And then the next thing you're going to look for is improvements for expenses. And then, so that takes care of the income statement. And then, what are they invested in? What are the assets of the business? How old are those assets? What kind of shape are they in? And then on the liability side, what does their debt look like? What is their financial obligations? And can you manage that with the amount of cash that's generated in any particular period? So that's sort of like 30,000 feet that works your way through the income statement and the balance sheet.
By the way, I don't like going rogue. I just like keeping it fresh. I'm not really
Let's go.
Yes. When I think of evaluation, let's say of a restaurant, the immediate thing is, are the booths in good shape? Is the vinyl ripped? Is the signage clean and all that? One thing that I'm learning is that you pointed out the standard operational procedures that actually lets the business be a business. Do you delve into that to actually add to the pricing?
No, not specifically. Because the SOP, those standard operating procedures that force a business owner to keep the process running, that keeps the employees doing what they're supposed to do, that keeps their assets fresh, that their operations tickety-boo, tick-tick-tick, just the way they're supposed to, will result in cash being generated in every period. Cash is king.
But the answer is no, you don't, but yes, you do.
Well, because I can see it, right? I don't delve into the operations because I'm providing an evaluation opinion. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to run the company. So if you hired me to look at this company and you're going to buy it, then my report would be something similar to like a quality of earnings, right? As opposed to what the value is. We can do one or the other or both, which is, well, I think it's worth $100. And I think the quality, meaning in the future, it's going to generate the cash that it generated in the past. That would be your quality of earnings.
On residential valuations, they tell you don't put it in a pool that won't earn the money back. What is the version in a business where the myths are what doesn't increase business value that people think it would?
That's a good question. So I think that's going to be industry dependent. What you want to do, what you want to make sure is that you invest in assets that will generate value, that generate cash, that they pay for themselves within a reasonable time. For example, let's go to the oil patch because everybody understands that. At least I do. But you're going to drill a well. The well is going to cost you, I don't know, $100. Let's use $100. If well is dry, you're never going to recoup your investment. Never. If there's no oil at the bottom of that hole, your $100 is gone. If you've drilled that well out of debt, then it's going to be a long time before you pay that back. So that's one of the things you got to think about. If you drill that well and it pays back slower than the requirements of the debt, you've got to pay $10 a year for 10 years, but you only make $8 a year from the oil that well produced, then your payout period is going to exceed your debt. That's a problem. It's not going to create value. This is true for all kinds of things. If you invest in a database, okay, you got to keep that database nice and fresh. And you've got to be able to sell that database over and over and over again. But if you've gone into debt to buy the database, you got to make sure that the cash generated from that database exceeds what you went into debt for. And you do it over time, of course, right? That's on a high level basis. You don't invest in the swimming pool because you will never get back the amount you put into the swimming pool in the increase in value to your house. Short answer.
I'm going to ask a question based on over time. Define over time. And I have a question because I remember talking to a VP of finance one time. He says, is the ROI 3 years? And I'm going, why 3? Like, why not 4? Why not 3.5? Why not 2? ROI in 1 year or 1 month, depending on what you're spending, that'd be awesome. But what is an appropriate? And again, it might be dependent because we did some solar panels and the ROI was a decade, right? And if you build a bridge, if you're a government agency, that might be over 50 years per se, right? So how does that thumb move around to figure that good ROI factor?
Industry dependent, right? So let's go to solar panels. You put solar panels on your roof of your home. That cost you X amount of dollars. But the utility company, the electricity generator, had to build a new gas plant to generate electricity. That's a longer term payout, right? So you have to balance the absolute value of the capital commitment to the lifetime of that asset, right? Your solar panels will last until the next hailstorm, where the gas plant will pay out maybe over 20 years or 25 years. So you have to look at the life of the asset and you have to look at the cost of the asset. Your investment in the solar panels is quite low compared to the new electricity plant, but they both generate electricity. And the lifetime is different. So it's industry dependent and it's really dependent on what the asset is. So there's no short answer. The ROI portion of that goes back to the time value of money, and we can talk about that again. Yeah, Wayne's gone. Yeah, he wants to hear this. So do you want to do time value of money?
I just enjoy it. You always use my name and I'm getting $100. I always like that.
You're going to be buying and selling a boat shortly. I understand, if I recall correctly. It's not a bad memory, right?
It's a fantastic memory. Okay, so the time value of money. I owe you, Wayne, $100. Can I give you the money today? Let's say can I give it to you today or do you want it in a year from now?
I want it today.
Okay.
He's greedy.
Yes, he is. I know. He's a very good entrepreneur is what he is.
Yep.
Okay, why, if I held your money for a year, can I pay you $100?
I want to have my time honored because I can't do something with that 100 I could do something with.
That's right. So let's talk about inflation. First one is inflation. Bank of Canada says we're about 2%, but if you go to the gas station or you go to the grocery store, you know that there's a little higher amount in food and fuel of inflation. And those are generally excluded from the basket of goods that the Bank of Canada uses to quantify annual growth in prices. And they do so because food and fuel are very volatile. So they generally take them off. But let's say 5% because the numbers are easy. So $100 in a year from now to be even with inflation, your $100 today will buy $95 worth of stuff in a year. So I'd have to pay you $105, give or take, to get $100 worth of stuff in a year, and you'd be whole. Now, the secondly thing is, you may not think I'm a very good credit risk. I might not pay you back. Now, I will pay you back, but you might be concerned about that. And so you need to be compensated for assuming that risk. How much? I don't know, $2, $3 maybe? And then thirdly, if I have your money, then you cannot invest it and you forego a rate of return. So at the very least, you should earn the rate of inflation. So call it $2 because that's what the Bank of Canada says inflation is. So $2. So 2 and 3 and 5 is 10 in a year from now to make you whole and happy with the risk that you've taken by giving me your $100. You should demand $110 from me. Time value of money.
One thing, it is actually one of the questions written down. I'm not going rogue. What could I do next month, in the next 30 days, that would make my valuation better?
Read your cash flow statement. The accountants, so for most small businesses, in Canada, they get their accountants to do their taxes annually. And the accountants prepare a balance sheet and an income statement. It's called, depending on the province that you're in, it's called a compilation report, or it might be called a notice to reader. And that shows your income statement and your balance sheet. But there's a statement that's in between those two, and it uses elements for both. And it's called your cash flow statement. And your cash flow statement will tell you the sources and uses of the cash that your business generated in that period. So if there's one thing you could do as a business owner in the next month, and especially now because it's going to be tax season and we're in the middle of tax season, ask for a cash flow statement. And once you get it, ask for an explanation of what a cash flow statement does, because it does tell you that you generated so much cash from operations, so much cash from investing or selling an investment, and how much cash you used or acquired from financing. And knowing where your cash comes from helps the business owner, helps you understand how to change your operations to improve things. It's the one thing that accountants just don't do unless you pay them for it, and it's worth it.
I've noticed that you are not the face of your business. Your business is itself. And you're part of it, you built it, etc. And if you're not the face, that means there's somebody else around running the business, typically. If you get sick, you get taken out, whatever, or you're on holidays. You have that opportunity. You're off for a month. Good luck. It's a nice stress-free moment, right? Especially if you're doing it during tax season and you're an accountant. That means you have someone else there, or you have a team there. Would that be fair to say? And do you just let things go? Not go as in degrade, but you let it go, let it run the way it should. How do you set that up?
First of all, I think you got to think about what makes your business go. I actually you got to think about what you're good at and what your team is good at and what drivers are in your business. So do you have a stellar salesperson? Do you have standard operating procedures that your staff know what to do in the event of? What's the cycle of your business? So let's say you're a housing contractor. So it takes 3 months maybe to build a house. That's going to be a far different gig than, say, a retail store maybe selling pet food, right? Again, it's industry specific, it's business specific. Your team needs to know what they're supposed to do. You have to make sure that your team has all of the tools that they need to do the thing that they're supposed to do. And then you also need to put into place the authority for those people to find the things that they need in the event that they're not there. So it really depends. Again, it's industry specific, but you want to take a holiday, then your team's they've got to be well prepared, but they also have to have the authority to do what you need them to do in your absence. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of phone calls.
Yeah. While you're on the beach having a margarita or whatever it is, or rum and coke. And we all look backward and pretend we're looking forward. But having done that, if you wanted to sell your business in 3 years, 2 questions. 1, when do we call Caroline? And 2, how do we prepare for a buyout and an exit in 3 years?
You probably, so you're looking to exit in 3 years. You should be thinking right now about who your buyer is going to be. And I would look at 3 buckets of buyers. Okay. The first one is friends and family and employees, right? So it's a very personal relationship. And principally for most small businesses, a lot of small businesses, you're going to have a trusted employee that's been with you a long time. And you've worked with them and it's a solid relationship. And if you leave, then you're going to be concerned about that person. Right? That's when you know that they're the right person. They've got the initiative, they're strong, they understand the business, and they don't want to leave just because you've left. Right? They want to continue doing what they're doing. So have that conversation. Do you want to buy this? Not today, but in the future. I mean, they're going to look at you and they're going to say, well, you got a few gray hairs there or something, right? And they're going to say, well, it'll be okay. How am I going to afford this, right? Thank you for the opportunity. Now, that's one bucket. The second bucket is private equity. And you have to have significant cash, significant historical cash flow for a private equity buyer to come in. And what they're going to do is they're going to put their management in the position that you're doing, and they're going to run it on a professional basis. And that's going to be hard on your employees. But if you're already distant from your employees and they don't see you, then they're not going to notice. It's just a different manager. And then I think that the third one would be public companies. And again, that's going to be rare and even more so than private equity.
So private equity doesn't always have a really great reputation. If you shop at Hudson's Bay, for example, you might have that as there is a landmark moment, and I get it, but they basically struck mined the store and its assets, and the property it was on, and now all of a sudden they're in bankruptcy court. When you walk away from a business, do you literally have to, I guess you have to emotionally cut your ties, right? It's not your box of bolts anymore, even though you might have had pride in it, and not that you don't have pride in it anymore, but it's gone. Is that a hard thing you found when people have gone through evaluations afterwards, and then, kind of like a buyer's remorse, but in reverse?
Well, so private equity is different than, say, a sale to an employee or something. So if it's a friendly sale and you're on a small side of the business, then the bank is going to support your employee purchase, but not 100%. And they're going to then come along and ask the seller to do their part. They call it a vendor take back loan or a vendor take back. And that means that you are going to hold the mortgage on the business for your employee. Kind of like mortgaging your kid's house, right? You're going to, you've got a couple of extra dollars. The kid wants to buy a house. You help them a little bit, but they've got to pay the mortgage to you. that's how small businesses often transact. And I'm thinking of businesses that are, they're contracting trades, electrical, plumbing, those kinds of trades. You'll sell it to your employee, but you're going to have to stay involved a little bit. And that they won't be able to sell out the assets out from underneath you because you're going to own the debt that they've taken on. Private equity does do what you've just suggested. And in that case, what they're doing is looking for value in the business that's not being maximized. Right? So you've got these stores on all these locations. They own the real estate underneath the store, but the cash flow from the store is less than the value of the real estate. So sell the real estate and then put the company into bankruptcy. And that's what they do.
Would it not make sense? And this is based on that. If you own that business, would it have not made sense then with the owners of the Bay, I'm just speaking hypothetically, to sell them instead of going through a private equity firm, sell that which is, saleable without actually having to, because if you're still part of it, you look at the long game, right? If I buy an asset, this is going to help the business. If I sell off this component to gain immediate cash flow, right, and short-term cash flow, and correct me if I'm using the wrong terms, but if you're to getting that to bolster so you can further the business a bit more, or even migrate. Would that not have been a better move on their behalf? And this, again, is hypothetical because we don't know all the ins and outs of the business space. But if you had that type of asset, would you have not leveraged that? Would that not have been the smart move?
Yeah, it's complicated, Bernie.
Yeah.
And so the question, I think what you're asking is if that business doesn't generate a sufficient rate of return, should you sell the primary asset that that's holding the value? I'm going to go back to Kodachrome film or Blockbuster Video.
Yeah.
I think what killed the Hudson Bay is it's Walmart and Amazon. I don't think it was that private equity killed it. They just drove the stake into the heart. But really it was big box stores who own the supply chain to get the product that the customers want at a really cheap price. And they just couldn't manage that market. And I don't know why. That error might have been made in the 1985 or 1990 or 1995, but a long time ago. And it's just been, the value's just been evaporating over time. You can't look at the last 6 months and say, well, they made a bad choice. I think that the operators of the business made the mistakes in the 90s or in the early 2000s. We used to have a really thriving retail sector. And that was, it was Eaton's. These were thriving businesses. But something happened. And that thing that happened was Amazon and Walmart. Walmart owns its supply chain. It doesn't, I should be more careful. They own their suppliers who supply to them, right? They make the term so hard, but so very valuable to those suppliers that they will bend over backward to deliver. And they just squeeze those suppliers relentlessly. Either you deliver me the stuff that I want at the price I want, or we're not going to have your stuff in our store. It's that easy. Amazon, however, took a different route. They said, yeah, this is great, but I don't need all of this. I don't know what it is. Merchandising, I think it's called, right? We don't need to merchandise all this stuff and make the good looking models and having the nice looking furniture and the good looking store. We can do it digitally. And the cost difference is huge. It's like $1 million to one. And that's like, it's huge, right? I mean, look, we're doing digital today, right? 15 years ago, we would have needed a studio with a cameraman and a light guy and a boom operator for the microphones, right? What if that all cost? What does it cost today? Pennies.
Yeah.
Technology changed, and I don't think the Hudson Bay managed that.
Something that we mentioned insurance earlier. When I met you first, I thought, okay, somebody's getting divorced or there's a partner split up. But I'm starting to see a much bigger picture where you're providing some level of clarity, some level of comfort, some level of, you're taking some of the drama out of the process where it's not like going to an auction sale. You have to decide right at 3 p.m. what the business is worth. I know. And that working with someone like yourself so that you have a sense of what your business is worth, I can actually see that's valuable when you're not getting divorced or fighting with a partner.
I would agree. I do have some clients who come back year over year, and they are looking to see what the value of their business is because they want to know a few things. Did we do good? Because they're so focused on running their business, right? They're doing the things that do run the business. And then they pop their head up and go, did we make any money? Yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure. And I go back to running my business, right? It's the gopher thing. You guys got gophers, don't you?
Gophers, wolves, moose, bear.
What's the groundhogs? I think we call them groundhogs.
Okay, so we call them Richardson ground squirrel is, I think, the technical term, but we call them gophers.
We also have house hippos too.
What?
House
He's lying
hippos.
to you. He is lying to you.
See, for house hippos, little wee hippo kind of walking through. It's not all things you see online or true, right? And this is like dust bunnies, right? So you know what a dust bunny is, right? House hippo. Except this little hippo kind of, yeah. Sorry, I said too far.
It was him, Caroline. It wasn't me.
Fair enough. But I don't remember what the question was.
Caroline, I do have a great question for you. In Calgary, you can actually walk to the store and say, I know what that business is worth. But when you're in a global world, how big an area do you service and how do we get a hold of you?
So my credentials recognized across Canada, and I'm IVS trained, so I can do international. I'm indifferent as to the size of the business. I charge on hours worked, not on the dollars. But I have to warn you, the bigger companies tend to be more complex. Because they just are, right? They just have different operations and different ways to make money, and that's what they do. If they want to get a hold of me, you know how to get a hold of me. Caroline Troy Valuations. You can find me online at troyvalue.com, TROYVALUE.com. You can find me in Facebook and on LinkedIn, both myself and our business, Troy Valuations, Caroline Troy. And that's the best ways to get me.
Caroline, thank you so much for coming back again. Totally enjoyable. Wayne, you add pleasure to these calls. Totally appreciate your presence here in these calls, and you, the Knack for Business listeners, because you're the ones going to have a little chuckle here. And you know what? Just to kind of recap, Caroline helps you understand the real value of your business that you've built, right? And if you're a one-man show or you're the one-man micromanager, you want to stop that because you're hurting yourself in the long run, unless, of course, you like paint, in which case that's not business that Caroline can help you in. And she works with business owners that believe their companies are unsellable. So she can help flip things around for you. And so that's going to be the kind of the key piece of everything you have to understand. So reach out to Caroline. She can help your business get that success that you're looking for. And if not, she'll tell you straight up. She's a straight shooter. All right. Oh.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from @Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.